So a work session is a work session for the people around these tables. It's the planning commission and it's the four people that were uh, uh, allowed us to be part of this to work on the issues with solar power. So something for the gallery, the people that are sitting behind Darren. You can listen. You're welcome to come to the meeting, but you can't talk. It's a work session for the members. So you just don't get a chance to talk, but you can sure listen and you can sure attend. So, and we're happy to have you here. Let me see. First order of business for me is the introduction of the four people that are here that join the Planning and Zoning Committee. And so, Emily, you want to start us out with a short introduction of yourself?
I am Emily Thies. Me and my husband have lived down here for over 20 years. We're one of the 17 families down here that are against because the solar farms would be directly attached to our property. And I brought you a list, Charlene, because you said at the commission meeting there's only 2 families, but there's a total of 17 plus. So that's why we're wanting to be involved in this.
And is that your able assistant?
That's his able assistant.
Anything else, Emily?
No.
Okay. Mark?
Mark Briggs, live in Linn County, south of the power plant, a couple miles. Grew up there since '96. Live on some beautiful acres over there. Call it God's country.
Yeah.
4 little kids in the community. Help coach and try to do anything I can. And here I am.
There you are. Yeah. And you just lost your assistant.
Yeah, she'll
be
bounce
back.
in and out. She don't get too far from me.
Jeff?
I'm Jeff Hines. I live over just south and east of Parker. Our family farming operation over there, the cow-calf operation. My wife and I both work in the school system up in Paola, but have been Linn County residents for our entire married lives and 20 plus years. For a little while. So, no preconceived notions about what solar energy may or may not be. I'm curious to learn, make sure the regulations that are presented are right.
All right. And Dustin Darren is not be able to be here tonight.
Dustin had knee surgery this morning, so he won't be able to attend tonight, but he's good to go from here on out.
Oh, lame excuse.
I know.
No pun intended. Well, we'll get an introduction from Dustin next time he's here. We need to let you guys know who the members are. So, Emily, you want to start your introduction? Self-introduction? Huh? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's probably going to happen.
I read Emily and I said that again. So, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Staten. I've lived here for the last 15 years, but my family has been here since the 1860s.
Awesome.
So, yeah. I have a degree in zoning and urban planning and whatnot.
Awesome.
And hardly anybody will ever be here before Emily is for a meeting. She gets here early.
Elizabeth. If it's any consolation, my middle name is
That's it.
Elizabeth.
My apologies. Yeah, I should have. We're always here early, so. Paul, got that one right?
Yeah, short. Paul Porter. I live over by Lassine. Been here since 2014. Been on the planning and zoning for I think a couple of years last month, and enjoy helping out, learning, and doing new stuff. So.
I'm Rich Morrell. I grew up here in Linn County. I'm a 5th generation farm family. My relatives came in, the Jacksons came in shortly after Civil War was over, and we've got a century farm, and we've been here forever. I farmed with my dad for 2 years after high school. Did not go well, and I said, Dad, this is not working out for either one of us. So I went back to college and ended up working in higher education for 42 years, and retired. And then I had married Carrie Barnes, who's also actually her family came in before the Civil War, so we're a long time Linn Countyans. And so when Carrie and I retired, she's not retired yet, but when I retired, we moved back to Linn County. I joined this, I was asked to be on the commission in 2018. So I'm ending my 5th year. I've got one more year to go, and I'm term limited out. So um, I was in the first graduating class of Jayhawk Linn, 1973. So
Nice.
I'm always proud of that. So,
And he was homecoming king.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you let it forget. We got the pictures to prove it.
Okay, I'm Charlene Sims. I've lived north of Park for 45 years. I've been on the planning board for over 20 years, so I'm termed down here in 2 years because I got reappointed. So that's it.
And you're
I don't have a reporter.
you're over.
I don't run a newspaper and a bed and breakfast. So
There you go. David.
Dave Fisher. I live about as far west as you can go. In fact, our property butts up against the county line west of Centerville. So I've been down here about 15 years, and I am a retired business owner and a newbie to the planning committee. Looking forward to working with everybody.
Yeah. But not a newbie to our meetings and our processes. You've been following them for
Yeah, right,
a few years.
right.
Yeah.
6 years, yeah.
Okay. All right. Before we get to the meat of everything, I think there's a couple of logistic things we need to kind of figure out and decide on. There's a couple that come to my mind, and you may have some other questions too, but the questions that come up, how often do we want to meet? And I'll just lay my cards on the table. I think once we get into working through this, we should be meeting every week. I think if we meet every other week, we're going to lose stuff in the middle. We'll have to meet and kind of catch up what we did last time. And I think just meeting every week until we get this thing done, I think is a better way to go. But I'm willing to hear a discussion about that. And we probably wouldn't start until after the holiday seasons are over. Does that work for everybody?
I think at least once every week.
Yeah, at least. And there may be times where we think, and we did this when we were doing the other stuff, sometimes we just feel like we got to meet more often, and we can do that. But a minimum of one every other week. And I'll leave it up to Darren to figure out what best day and time probably works.
Well, what's the consensus? Does Wednesday nights, Thursday nights?
We're all here tonight. Well, most of us are.
I don't mean speaking up. On my school schedule, Wednesday's the one night a week we rarely have activities, so that works the best for me.
Wednesday night?
Wednesday would be
Everybody
best
else?
for me as well.
Me too.
I'm open, so it's fine.
And we're gonna wait till after the first of the year? Or
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
we want to do a meeting next week?
My vote's for after holiday season's over.
Okay.
When we've done this before, sometimes we've been in 3 to 4 hour meetings, and I think people just get exhausted after about 2 hours. I would really like to set as a goal that our meetings wrap up at about the 2 hour mark. Now, there may be times where we're hot on the topic and we're just not going to cut it off at 2. We need to spend another 10, 15 minutes wrapping it up. But I would like for us to shoot for 2 hours as a time limit for meetings. Again, with flexibility. I'm seeing heads nod.
Sounds good. Yep.
No opposition to that.
Starting at 6:30.
The 6:30 would be more convenient for me because it takes a while to get here. For
Okay.
the meeting.
All right. 6:30. If you're opposed to that, speak now or forever hold your peace. Done. Don't, can't think about that very long. So then we've got the issue of how we really want to attack this task. My thoughts, and I'll let you guys bounce this thing around, is that we just start at the top of Article 14. 1, 2, and 3 are pretty perfunctory stuff. I don't think there's really much to argue about in those. They're just setting up the structure about how things will work. 4 through 13, with the exception of 5. 5 is site plan. I don't think there's anything, it's just how you do the site plan. It's more perfunctory than anything else. But 4 through 13 minus 5, I think are the ones we really need to concentrate on. And my thoughts are we just start at the top and go down until we get to the bottom. Is there any other thoughts about how we might want to approach this or do it different?
Can I have a question, because we've been working with Senator Mike Thompson, several of the counties, and the state of Kansas has put together 3 bills that they're trying to pass rather quickly. And it's in regards to all of this, and it's on the state level. And I mean, it's very extensive. It talks about a lot of different things. And my question would be, and I can email everybody because it talks about the county and the commissioners, and nobody in the county should benefit for or be on a panel or be on a board of any of the solar companies. And it talks about the taxation. And then there's a huge thing that ties like 12 pages on the conditional use permit. And then it talks about a lot of stuff that we're talking about, like setbacks, 3 miles from an unincorporated area. There's just tons of information. And if they are going to be passing this, how would you want to look at that to see what could possibly coming down from the state versus what we're talking about here?
What do you think?
One thing I've noticed, working in education, we get a lot of information that's sent to us from the state level that we're forced to adhere to. But the one thing that I would say is consistent is that it's nearly impossible to predict what may come out and what kind of timeline it is. So it could be stuck in committee for 3 years.
True, it could, but there's something that they're trying to push through now, just speaking to him. I don't know if it will pass, but it kind of gives you an idea what the state is looking at I mean, there's just so much more involved in it versus what's in these. And it might just be something to look at to see, is this something we might want to incorporate into our stuff?
I think the more we know about this subject, the better. I mean, so why wouldn't we look, doesn't mean the state's gonna adopt it tomorrow or 10 years from now. But why wouldn't we look at what the state's considering? It might give us some ideas.
Yeah, I don't see any harm in that at all.
I'm not saying we have to
providing
adopt it, but
information.
yeah.
Yeah. And we'll get a chance to read it and look through it. And if we want to discuss more about it, we can.
Okay.
Not, we don't have to.
Sure, I like the concept of taking information from other sources. So likely they've got some research behind what they're trying to adopt. It could be biased, it could be unbiased. We don't know that. But if we're going to look at those same things, what other counties have already adopted similar regulations? And how do ours either look similar or different from those?
Yeah, and I
In
think
the same vein as what you're
exactly. And I think we have several counties in Kansas that we've got their regulations too.
One thing I should have mentioned earlier is in a work session atmosphere, we can't make any motions. We can't make any official decisions. Having done this a while now, I look for head nods, and that's about as close as I can get to moving things along. So I'm seeing head nods on this, and if there's no opposition, I think that's a good thing to do. And we'll provide that.
Absolutely. I'll forward it because Darren had sent out to everybody. So I'll just attach it to that and send it back to everybody.
Okay, all right. Okay. So otherwise, are we okay with just going through, starting at 4 and working through 13?
You know me, I'm for site plan, so I think that we should at least go over 5 a little bit.
Okay. I just thought maybe it might save us time, but yeah, I think it'll be pretty cursory and it won't take a long time. So
Right.
yeah, let's do it. Okay. Do I see head nods on that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, 4 through 13, not skipping anything. All right. My last bit of business before we get really started on the meat of this thing is Darren, I would like for you as best you can to give us uh, uh, the charge that the Board of Commissioners really wanted us to, what they want us to do. What do they want us to do?
My understanding is go through Article 14 and see if it stands up to the test of complaints and different scenarios.
Okay? That's pretty brief. Questions for Darren?
Would you mind sharing with us what the process looked like if a landowner anywhere in the county came forth and said, I'd like to put a commercial solar project on my property, from the time that they notify you until the time the county commissioners take action, setting the moratorium aside, what steps would be involved in that?
So if I received an application, first I'd go through it to make sure that it was a complete application. And it pretty much Article 14 describes what a complete application is. If there's parts of it missing, I would send back saying that we don't have this. Once all of that is put together, I would take it before the Planning and Zoning Commission. They could ask for different, what am I wanting to say? They can ask for different reviews on it, like engineering reviews, wildlife and parks, stuff like that, if it's not included in that. Those are based on, those costs are set out in Article 14 to be sent back to the applicant to make those payments. Once all of that's done, then we could set it for a public hearing, and there's really no time frame on that. I mean, due process comes into play, but there's really no time frame on that. And once all of that's complete and receive it, we could set it for a public hearing. Once it's set for a public hearing, we have to wait 20 days per state statute. Then planning and zoning hears it. Planning and zoning can vote yes, vote no, or table it. If they table it, it could go to the next meeting for another month. They can table it again for more information. If they don't table it and they vote yes or no, I still have to take it to the county commissioners, which I have to wait 14 more days for that process. There's an appeal process in that 14 days. And at the 14 days, the commissioners would hear everything, and they would either vote yes to accept, no to decline, or they could table it for further information, or they can send it back to planning and zoning for further review. And if it gets sent back to planning and zoning, then there's no time frames. So it would be, if it was sent back to planning and zoning, it would go at their next meeting. If there was action taken at the next meeting for planning and zoning, the following Monday, I could take it back to the commissioners.
And at the planning meeting, the first time, the public has the right to express their opinion.
Every meeting's public.
And at the commission meeting, when it goes before the commission, they have the right to do that too.
That's correct.
So are the regulations that'll be set forth considered you follow these exact in terms of things like setback, or are they minimum recommendations that based on the site plan presented that either zoning and planning or the county commissioners could make more strict?
They can make more strict. It's a minimum.
Right.
So take, for instance, the minimum setback for an industrial or utility use project, the minimum setback from a dwelling unit's 500 feet. Planning and zoning can look at the site plan and go, and that person that owns that in that 20-day period from their notification can call, send reference to me, and I can add that to my staff report. and make recommendations to planning and zoning in my staff report that, hey, this homeowner, for whatever reason, I recommend it be 1,500 feet or 2,000 feet, whatever it may be. So that recommendation can be made. Planning and zoning can extend that even further. Then if there's a vote and it goes to the commissioners can change it.
Those increases in setback or something may be a result of things like information received back from a review from engineering or wildlife expert or concerns from a nearby resident. things of
Correct.
that nature.
Correct.
Jeff, the term we'll use a lot in here is CUP,
Yep.
conditional use permit. And I'll have to emphasize that conditional part. I mean, it really is conditional, and we can, the commission has a lot of latitude to make it conditional and to make it work for the county. And I think we've done that throughout the time I've been on this.
And the law, the legal that backs that up for conditional use permits is the golden, what's it called? They're golden.
Golden versus the city of Overland Park.
Darren, when you're dealing with like the projects where there's like Clearway has two pieces, I'm using you, Mary, because you're here. If there's multiple pieces of property that are encompassed in one conditional use permit, that will all be filed and then it's considered, I don't want to say you can't protest each property. It's all one. Does that make sense
The conditional use permit is for the total acreage being used.
for each
There,
project?
there may be 10 parcels in a conditional use permit, but that conditional use permit covers all 10 parcels.
Okay.
But in the conditions, we could actually say like a certain area, right? There would be a condition for a certain area of that or not? I'm just asking.
Yeah.
So,
I believed, I knew all the answers that you stated, but I just wanted to get that out in the open so I make sure I didn't have a misconception on anything.
Sure, absolutely.
And for everybody on this board, there's no dumb questions. If you don't understand something, ask the question. I often say, I don't know the answer to this question and nobody else is asking, so I figure they don't know either. So I'm going to ask the question. So do not hesitate to ask questions. That just helps out everybody.
And sorry, I also want to add back to Emily's question. Say that the project's 2,000 acres and they only want to put 1,500 acres of solar panels on it. It's still the 2,000 acres. It's not the 1,500 where the panels are. It's the 2,000 or whatever it may be is the total acreage being used.
and that comes off the 8,000.
That comes off the 8,000.
So it's not what solar panels are on, it's the total acreage of the property being used.
That's correct.
And CUPs are bound to the land,
CUPs are bound to the land, not
the owner, not the leasee. It
correct.
stays with the land. If everything changes, it stays with the land.
Right. Say you have a salvage yard at your house and you move. I'm sorry.
Let's say hypothetically,
Let me rephrase that. Say you have and you sell that property, that conditional use permit is still tied to that land.
Right.
So the new owner acquires that conditional use permit. Now, in the regulations, if a solar owner sells a property, it's got to come back to planning and zoning for approval for the next person to take it.
Not for them to sell it, but for someone else to take.
Right.
But also, that's the reason we look at everything so carefully is because it does stay with the land. And sometimes we put limits on it because it stays with the land. And so
Right.
if we worry that the person might be leaving in 3 years, we put a limit on it.
Yeah, you can set, and it's at the discretion of planning and zoning that they can do a 1-year conditional use permit and they've got to come back in and reapply in a year, 5 years, it's whatever. And it does have a expiration date. So if you set 5 years to it, at that 5th-year date, it expires. They have to renew it. If they allow it to expire, they're in violation of the zoning regulations. We'll take them to court.
So like on a solar project like this, what would be the time frame of the?
So I've read a bunch of different counties. Some have 5-year cups, some have 20-year cups, 10-year. It just varies. It's really at the discretion of planning and zoning on what they want to do with it.
Do you take into consideration the leases that the solar companies have signed with the home or the landowners?
That is something that can be taken into consideration. And I know, and I haven't seen any of the leases, but say they sign a lease for 20 years. I don't think planning and zoning would let a 20-year or issue a 20-year cut. They might, I'm not speaking for you, but I don't think that they would issue a 20-year cut. I probably would say, since this is new to the county, at most 5 years first time.
Okay. And then they would have to come back and reapply.
Mhm.
Okay.
Renew, yeah.
And a renewal goes through the same process as the original. So it would be the 20 days, the review,
So if they came in and they weren't doing everything they said they were doing and the 5 years was up, then that would be taken into consideration as far as the renewal.
they can revoke it.
So if the request is revoked, would you then move to Article 1410 and they begin the decommissioning plan at that point in time? That'd be an automatic thing.
Yes.
I think that you probably give them the chance to correct what they're doing, right? I mean, we've done that with quarries and things like that all the time.
Well, yeah, there would be, so we'd probably give 30 days to correct the situation. If it was something that was longer than 30 days, we would probably work with them to see progress of correcting it. At the end of 30 days, if there was no progress, it would definitely be done.
Are there items that could?
Or I'm sorry, Jeff, I say that, planning and zoning's got to make that decision.
Yeah, are there situations or conditions where a CUP could be pulled in the middle of the time it's already been granted to them because of lack of care on the property or no follow through?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So when we add conditions, I don't know, let's make one up. Say that there's whatever it may be, and there's nothing in the regulations about lighting. And they require ingress, planning and zoning requires ingress and egress lighting for something. And they do it, they get started, and they don't put up the lighting. I can go out there and say, you're in violation of your conditional use permit, because that was a condition added. I can go out and say, you're in violation of this. You've got X number of days to do it. If they don't do it, I would bring them back in here before planning and zoning and let planning and zoning make the decision to do what they want to do.
Have you guys experienced stuff like that before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious. I mean,
Yeah.
We just, I always say we. I'm not a party. They just revoked one probably 8 months ago.
but like if they're non-compliant, besides revoking, is there any punishment or, I mean, besides yay or nay, is there any, I guess, conditions to that?
In terms of like a fine or a criminal
Yeah,
code?
yeah.
We don't have the authorization to levy fines, but does the county?
No, so if something is in violation and they continue to be in violation and say it comes in and they revoke it, they don't, under our county codes or under our regulations, we can take them to court. And it says in there that it could be up to $500 per day for a fine. Ultimately, that could happen, but it's at the discretion of a judge.
So it's a pretty strong yes or no, whether they're gonna do it or not do it.
All right. Other questions for Darren before we leap into this.
I think I have a question in general. So besides going over all the articles, like if there's things that we think need to be implemented, like how would you recommend we present that to everyone?
Just off the top of my head, and we'll get comments from the rest of the board that's been here a while. Let's one, incorporate it into one of the sections we already have, or two, create a new section because it's pretty different than anything else we've looked at.
Well, I think we go.
At the appropriate time, you know, if we're in a section where you think something needs to be added, that's the time to talk about it.
But are you asking, is there a formal process or is it, or do you
Just
want?
kind of how you guys are used to it. Because I mean, I've kind of worked on, I don't have it in front of me, but I've kind of worked on a list of some things that I think could be very beneficial to be in there. And so I just didn't know if you want me to come up with a list and email them, verbally state them, or try to do it per article, or.
What's the will of the group?
Awesome question. I mean, if we're tasked with reviewing Article 14, which deals with solar energy conversion systems, 1 through 13 are not necessarily all encompassing because some things that you maybe have discovered or we stumble upon along the way. So some may fit in items 1 through 13, or it may need to be an additional topic that's added as 14-14.
Right.
But how we were gonna start off was with the questions that were brought up at that other meeting, right? First off, run them through. I mean, I didn't see us going just through the regulations now, I may be wrong, but actually bringing up the issues and comparing them to the regulations.
So my thought was that as we go through these, Emily and Mark would probably, and I use this for an instance, just say we're in the part of setbacks. As we're going through that, I'm sure that Emily and Mark's going to bring up their opposing argument for the setbacks. And I think that's how it's introduced, because probably every article in here you have, I'm guessing, something that you oppose to that.
So we would just state what our concerns are. Let's say it's setbacks, and you want 100-foot setbacks, and we want 1,000-foot setbacks. So I'm just minimizing it. So we would talk about it, and then you guys would go back and discuss it at your planning and zoning meeting, or?
No, we would take the, and I don't mean to speak
No, go ahead.
to everybody, but I think that we would take the 100-foot and the 1,000-foot and discuss it here and come to a consensus on what everybody agrees on. And then at the next planning and zoning meeting, they vote on what the consensus was.
Or we could do that after we got through the whole.
Or after,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we don't have to do it every month.
Yeah.
And it would probably be easier just to go through the whole thing, and when we get done, we're done, discuss it and have a vote on it. Yeah, I think you want to do that versus trying to itemize it. You don't want to vote on every consensus every. Right.
We're not voting anyways.
We're not voting. I mean, we're going ahead.
I'm talking about at the meeting.
Right.
Next plan, right.
One of the things you said at the beginning was that we would be tasked with looking at different scenarios. Am I remembering that correctly?
I said different scenarios because we don't have a conditional use permit to compare it to.
Yep. So the reason I brought that up is, let's say there's disagreement about what a minimum setback should look like. I would propose when we get to the end of it that we select some different parcels in the county for some fictitious projects and look at what 100-foot setback versus 1,000, using your analogy, may look like in a wide open, perfectly flat space versus a space that has natural terrain that would shield view from neighboring roadways or landowners to show the difference between why 1,000 may be too much or not enough, or why 100 may be too much or not enough.
Right. I agree.
All right. We okay all so far? Let me do a little bit of editorializing, and I want to just lay this out and just be upfront about it, and because it's going to come up as we work through all these issues. When the Planning and Zoning Commission was charged with writing the city code, we realized very quickly that we didn't have, as lay people, we didn't have the expertise to really put this together. And we asked the commissioners, the Board of Commissioners, for help. They said, yes, we understand that. We think you really needed an expert to help you through with this. So we let out bids for different entities to bid on the service to help us write this code. We had two bids, and we felt there was one that was really far and above better than the other one. It was also the more expensive one. And the commission, we took it to the commissioners, and they okayed it. And we got Mr. Kaup, K-A-U-P, a lawyer from Topeka, that helped us through this whole process. I came to appreciate him very much because he'd always put the question back to us. He says, I'm just advice to you. You're the board. You've got to make the decisions on this. And we did. But I think and he was, in my estimation, one of the most apt people in the state in regard to solar and wind issues. And I think he advised us really, really well. One of the things I hope you'll find out that I thought he did when he helped us write these codes is that conditional part. He set things up so that we had a lot of latitude to make things work within the code that we wrote. And I hope that you find that out and agree. But again, that's just my opinion, having worked with Mr. Kaup for 7 or 8 months that it took us to do this. So with that said, any other questions for Darren or myself? Hearing none, my first concern is, does everybody have a copy of Article 14 with them tonight? I'm saying yes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can
So-
can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Because you have Article 14, which deals directly with the solar, and Darren, you might be able to answer this, but when you have the conditional use permit, is it just your general, like Regina's Rescue would just fill that out, or is it more stringent when it's dealing with a massive solar farm as far as the conditional use permit?
So the application's the same. It's all in what they have to present to us to be able to do the application. So like Regina's Rescue, for instance, she filled out the application. We got a site plan. We got an overview of what she was wanting to do. What else did we get? Licensing that she had, things like that. So it's actually the same concept. Regina's was this thick. I can only imagine that a solar farm is going to be this thick because they're going to have to do, and it lists it all out in here what they have to provide. They've got to provide site plan, buffer plan, operation and maintenance plan, decommissioning, final development, financial agreement, and there will be stuff added into that I'm sure that they will ask for, like wildlife and parks. Which my conversation has been that they already know stuff like that, so they go to those entities. KDHE will be involved because they'll have to do water runoff, toxicity tests. So what they present and what they ask for, it could turn into whatever it may be. And I don't know what that looks like because we haven't gotten one yet.
So the reason I was asking that is because we're going to go through Article 14, and let's just say that we want soil samples before, during, after, blah, blah, blah. Is that something that is addressed in Article 14, or is that to be addressed in the conditional use permit, if we're concerned about it?
So if they ask for that as a condition, that can be done through the process. The conditional use permit part of the regulations, which is Article 20, is basically the format of what it does. The format of the meeting, the format of the appeal process, all of that. So there, the engineering study for everything is part of Article 14, or whatever conditions they add or whatever outside help they ask for to cover that.
So just a quick glance at 14-9, and then we'll get to it. Seems to me like an excellent place to insert something like that. If you want data from before construction, 2 years into the project, or every 6 months while it's going on, so that if all of a sudden there are concerning changes to the soil profile or presence of toxic items, that CUP could be either removed or they would have to take corrective action. So to me, that makes sense to fit into something like operation and maintenance. So to bring credence to what you said earlier about things that may be missing, that may be something missing that's not spelled out. Am I thinking along the lines of what you're
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
As far as the conditional use permits, like normally, I guess the best way to say it, so one of my concerns is putting a whole lot of stipulations on the cup itself. So it's like, if you have your regulations like about that thick, if you, by the end of it, if you're 4 times as thick because all your special conditions to it, like, does that hurt the county legally, or is it harder to obtain saying, well, you guys only had, I'm just doing 50 pages of regulations, but your conditional uses that we have to follow, you guys added 150 pages.
I'm gonna give you an opinion, and then I'm gonna ask Charlene to get, because she's got 20+ years on this commission, and she's got more history than I do. But my answer is, every condition that the commission thinks is an issue, we need to put it in there.
Right.
And if it's a long list, it's a long list, and the county will just have to accept that. Well, actually, it's the commissioners that have to accept it from us, because they're the final word on that. But Charlene?
Well, if we have too much of the regulations, it doesn't give us a chance to, set it up to each individual thing, because let's say, something is like, doesn't even pertain to a regulation because it's a different kind of issue. Why, it's easier to add the conditions on than to have it in the regulations. The regulations are sort of general, if you had them too specific, it just wouldn't, it wouldn't fit everything. And then you'd almost have to be saying, well, we're going to approve you except for that regulation or something.
So my question then would be, if we're concerned about one specific issue and it's not in the regulations and it goes to the conditional use permit and it's not put in there, or what a concern would be, then do we go to the I don't know if it's the protest period, the 20-day period where everybody's notified? Do we come in here and then say, well, this is what we're concerned with, we need to have this added into the conditional use permit?
Darren, I know you want to answer this, but let me say, my recommendation or my thoughts on this are that when you've got a condition you think ought to be in there that's not covered in the regular stuff, you call Darren.
Okay.
You call Darren right
Yeah,
away.
that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the public to take their concerns and apply it to a situation. Because to give an answer to your question, Mark, say you write in black and white in the regulations a maximum setback of 2,500 feet, and it fits that piece of property, and we go to somebody applies on the west side of town, and we need 5,000 feet. Now you're tied to the regulations because it says it in black and white. That's all the further you can go. So in some cases, the conditions are better than black and white, if that makes sense.
So you really have to look at the verbiage.
Right.
And the thing you have to know about, need to know, and have to know about Darren is he's neutral. He can't do his job and take a position on anything. He has to remain neutral on everything, and we expect that out of him, and he does that. So, but he's the guy that would be the one to take that and then bring it to us as the commission.
But really, when the conditional use permit comes in front of us, you should be here. You should be here saying what you think about that, and so that everybody, right
Yep.
then can hear what you have to say.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, because there's been conditional use permits that I've presented, and my recommendation is, and I list all my findings and reasons why I come up with my recommendation, and my recommendation be, don't approve this. And planning and zoning approves it anyway. I mean, alls I'm doing is giving a finding for why, and they can, that's what they're here for. If they see something in those findings that I didn't see, that's why there's 9 of them.
So if I understand this correctly, if a commercial solar project was approved and there were 3 pages of conditional items that they had to satisfy for approval, then they are approved. The next group comes in and they're presented with 5 to 10 pages of items, meaning a much longer laundry list. They wouldn't have a legal right to be held to the same standard or conditions as the first project approved because the site location variables may be unique to those 2 places.
Each parcel of land's different. Because you may have natural buffer zone down one side with, trees or whatever it may be, and they don't need to require a buffer zone on that side.
Hence, the one size fits all approach isn't necessarily better.
Right,
Okay. But
Because-
it establishes clear minimums for protection.
right.
And Jeff, we can't give you legal opinions.
I know that. Yep.
You know that because of the business you're in. But we can be pretty assured that we're gonna get down to the bottom of stuff. And
Yep.
and even though we can't say legally this is the way they do it, but we have legal counsel too, and they can give us more information.
Your experience is your expertise.
Yeah, right. What else? I made a speech a couple of weeks ago to the Board of Commissioners, and I want to let you know a little bit about that. I said that I thought we've got people involved in this that can find the common ground where we can all stand. And I really think that's true. We can find common ground to stand and make this thing work. Having said that, it also is a lot of the making this work is going to be up to the zoning and planning and zoning commission, whoever that is in the years to come. And there has to be a trust level that there's good membership, which I think there is right now, but you never know in the future. And it's going to be up to the citizens of Linn County to make sure we've always got the best planning and zoning committee that we can have. Because the way this code's written, and it may change when we get into it, the way this code's written is the planning and zoning commission has a lot of latitude to make this work for everybody and the county. So, that being said, let's dive in. First one's 14-4, commercial and utility, SECS, general requirements for that. So I know you haven't had much time to prepare, but spend a few moments going through that and see if there's anything that concerns you on section 4. So that goes from 401 to what's the last one? 409. And if this is too soon just to dive into this, you can, I mean, if you want to call a meeting to the end now and just get ready for the 1st of January, that's okay too. I think it's the most important thing is for us to consider it and make sure we're good with what we want to do. So I don't want to rush you into this, but if we're all ready to go, fine. If we need some time to study it, Darren?
I was just gonna say that if you wanted the ad hoc members to take and digest what we've presented so far and come to an understanding or not an understanding, I'm sorry, to understand how the process works. I'm not saying that the process may have changed your mind in any ways, but it may give you a different outlook on something. And that way you can process what we've said and start the next meeting off fresh. But it's up to everybody else.
Just as a suggestion, so everybody can be prepared going forward. I'm not prepared on section 14. I thought this was just gonna be an informational meeting, but I can get through it if I decide to.
Hey, this is,
My point I wanted to make is, it might be worth considering assigning certain sections to certain nights. So that coming in, we've got a week to prepare for it, and maybe even share information between ourselves before the meeting, so that when we get in here, we're productive, and we're not wasting anybody's time.
David, my preliminary thoughts on that were, if we've got 2 hours, we probably can go through about 2 sections a meeting. But that's eyeballing it, because we're going to get to the point where one section is going to take all of our time.
Right.
Yeah.
But I like what you're saying. Next time we get prepared to
If
do
we
the
don't
next two.
take, we can,
And then at the end of the meeting, we can say, okay, 6 and 7 are coming up. Eyeballing it. Do we think we can do the whole thing, or do we just do one of those? We can do that as we go through.
right.
Does that work for everybody?
And so like, if we're just passionate about the height of the solar panels, I'm just picking this out, and we have information that backs up what we feel is important, prior to the meeting, emailing that information so everybody has that?
That'd be great.
Okay.
That would be great. Yeah. The better prepared we are coming to these meetings, the more efficient we're going to be with our time.
One question, would that be emailed to Darren, right? Because otherwise, does that count as a quorum if one of us individually?
It would be best if you email it to
You
me
and you do
I send
everything.
it.
Yeah. Right.
That's gonna be my next question. We have to worry about KOMA or KORA since we're not voting per se.
Right.
Kansas open meeting,
Right.
if we facilitate it through you, that's not a concern because we're not
Right.
interacting with each other, we're just receiving information.
Correct.
And actually, when we interact with each other, if it's a quorum, right? I mean, I could talk to Rich. I mean, we can't do a serial meeting and say, what do you think of this? Will you do this? Will you do this? But I can talk to you, whereas commissioners cannot talk to each other because 2 of them are a quorum.
As far as outside of the meeting?
Yeah,
Or-
because you can run into, and that's the word that I was looking for earlier, a serial meeting where Rich goes and talks to Paul and Paul goes and talks to Elizabeth and then all of a sudden everybody knows what's going on.
And that kind of violates the spirit
Right.
of the open records.
The intent is to have the meeting together.
Right. But that doesn't negate the fact that I want to have an individual conversation with
Right,
Charlene that starts there and ends there.
as long as there's not a quorum.
Right, right. And we just have to be ethical about that. I mean, I don't know any way there's anybody going to police that, but we just need to be ethical about that and say that's the way we're going to conduct our business.
Actually, if it came out though, it could be a concern for the county.
It could, it really could. So I'm hearing that we need some time to come up to speed on the first 2 sections.
Yeah, I think
Really
it's
like
cool.
your suggestion about having homework so we know exactly what section to be prepared for the next meeting. We can speak intelligently.
We'll do that at the end of every meeting. We'll say, okay, we got this
It
part.
also gives an opportunity for somebody that can't make the meeting to provide input before the meeting.
Absolutely.
Good thought.
I still, I'll beat the dead horse here, but that's just how I am. So clarification. So if I have several things that I think need to be implemented. So that's one of my main questions. If I don't see an area of where it should be added, should we wait till the end, or would everybody like to hear them up front? Halfway through,
It's up to the group. What do you think?
I don't have a problem knowing them up front. That way, if we feel like they fit in somewhere, when we get to that section, we could work on trying to include them.
So as you see them, bring them up and we'll either talk about it then or we'll decide when we want to talk about it.
Give them to Darren. I mean, it's like what came up at that meeting that night.
Yeah,
You know, we have those.
Mark, if you'll email them to me, everything, I'll email them out. That way everybody's got a chance to review them. And as we're going through them, it may be a situation of Elizabeth doesn't think it fits in this section, but Jeff thinks it does, and he can bring that up at that time.
What else, Mark?
That's it.
Okay, have we reached a point we're done with business tonight?
So will the first meeting be January 3rd?
You got a calendar?
Yep. January 3rd is the first Wednesday in January.
6:30. And the sections we're going to do are
4 and 5.
4 and 5.
January 3rd. That's my poker night. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I'm open. So we'll meet starting the 3rd and plan on meeting every Wednesday at 6:30.
Just to clarify, I'm sorry. Just to clarify what sections?
4 and 5, right?
4 and
4
5.
and 5 for the 3rd.
Okay.
And at the end of the meeting on the 3rd, we'll decide, everybody take a peek ahead and figure out how much you think we can get done. We'll have a short discussion about that and set that up for the next meeting.
I guess, another question for you. If we feel like, let's just say we get into this 4 or 5 meetings in a row, and, you know, I like to do a lot of research. Say, hey, I did find something that should have been in 14.2. I'd like to bring up tonight. I think trying to not bounce around at all times, but still leave it open enough to where someone does find a true concern that it could be acknowledged.
I have no problem with that at all. Do you?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
We need to take as much time as we need to do this thing right. We don't want to do a do-over. So. Yep. Okay. Any other business to come to the work session tonight? Hearing none, last call. We stand adjourned. See you on the 3rd.
All right.
Same bat station, same bat time.
Christmas.
How's your mom?
that?
How's your mom doing? Barb.
Oh, that's my grandma.
Oh, she,
Yeah, I'm a June. So, yeah.
okay, that's
Yeah,
right.
she just turned
your dad, too.
86.
I know your dad too.
Yeah.
I didn't even do anything.
She just had her
I'm just trying to
So,